Wow, you can just see how strong those winds are. Again, the National Weather Service did post some of the top wind speeds, upwards of upper 40 and 50 miles per hour. So right now, I want to bring in Jeff Lindner. He's a meteorologist with the Harris County Flood Control Center. And Jeff, there we go. I'm joined by Jeff now. Good morning. Or I should say we're almost heading into midday. How are you?
Yeah, it just all blends together when
I
we're
know, I
doing this
know,
stuff.
I know. The way we work over here, I know you're in the same boat. With that being said, we do have our first tropical storm of the season, Tropical Storm Arthur. This could have gone a lot of different ways. Considering we have a tropical storm basically at our doorstep, this really ended up in the best case scenario. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. We were looking at this Sunday and Monday, and it looked a lot worse when we were looking at the potential for the really heavy rains kind of spreading further inland. And we've seen some heavy rains over the last couple of days. We really have. But we've been really fortunate that we've had some breaks between that, and that's allowed the water to go down. So we've had a lot of street flooding, but the bayous and creeks have done an excellent job of getting rid of that water and preparing for the next round. And so we've been really fortunate that we've had the breaks. We haven't had the sustained heavy rainfall. And then, like we kind of have talking about it, it doesn't take the name to make this have impacts. We were having impacts well before this was named, and now it's named, and the impacts are going to be sort of decreasing. We've probably seen the worst of the rainfall, not really anticipating a lot of heavy rainfall and flooding moving forward for the metro area, maybe down along the coast, and even the winds we're seeing will start subsiding this afternoon. So, we've had this lesson before here with named and not named storms, and we always have to look at the impacts.
You were touching a little bit about that. So people are going to hear, okay, we have a tropical storm. It's expected to skirt right along the upper Texas coastline. However, our impacts are fairly minimal. I mean, I know we're tracking some really strong winds right now from Galveston and then Chambers County, but explain to viewers why that's the case. When they hear, okay, a tropical storm is basically right here, and then our impacts are minimal and the rain is actually decreasing. Explain that to viewers listening right now.
Yeah, I think a lot depends on exactly where we are in relationship to the circulation. So while the circulation, it wasn't named, but it was down there in South Texas, we were on that quote dirty side of it. And so we were getting all that rain coming in off the Gulf and that front stalling over the area. And so, it just depends where we are in relation to the system. And today it's going to be moving right off the coast and then onto the east of us. And that puts us on the drier and clean side. We're kind of getting on that side of it now. And so where you are in relation to the center is really important when it comes to impacts. The structure is also really important. This is a really lopsided storm with a lot of the heavy rain and weather well off to the east and southeast toward Louisiana, well out into the Gulf. And so we're just getting, we're very fortunate in the way it's moving that it's not bringing those impacts really into the area, but kind of taking them away from us. So we had more impacts here, over the last few days than we're going to have today as it passes right along the coast, minus the winds.
100%. So Sunday and Monday, I want to hear your thoughts of how the city kind of handled the rain as far as some of those torrential downpours, and we were seeing some of those rainfall rates of 3-4 inches per hour Sunday and Monday. How do you think all the improvements that we've done over the past 10 and 15 years across a big part of Harris County, how do you think, we handled a lot of that heavy rain that came in on Sunday and Monday?
Well, the good news is we did not have any structure flooding. I know we had a few homes with some structure flooding yesterday up in the southern part of Montgomery County or northern Harris County. But again, we had 6 inches of rain in a couple of hours up there, so not completely unsurprised with that. But as far as the bayous and creeks go, they've done a really good job of getting the water out of here. Now, again, we've had the breaks after the heavy rainfall that has allowed a lot of this water to drain off. But if we would have had higher rainfall amounts, we might have had some additional concerns. We were certainly concerned Sunday and Monday that we could have bayou and creek flooding. We've just been really fortunate in how the rain has happened and how it's moved across the area. And I know some areas have been hit extremely hard, and other areas really haven't had that much rain this week. And a lot of times that's how these systems work out. And so you get different amounts and different impacts in different areas. And that's what's a lot of time very hard to convey when we're going into these types of events, when we start talking about, oh, we're expecting, a lot of rainfall, but it tends to happen in very isolated areas. And this week it's been, Montgomery County, Harris County. Then Monday it was in kind of the Spring Branch, Aldine area, and today it's the southeast part of the county and down on the coast. And so it kind of moves around, and explaining that and how it moves around, I think sometimes is a little bit of a challenge. But a lot of our infrastructure has done really good. Even our street flooding. Yes, we had street flooding, but you got to remember our streets are designed to flood. And so to keep the water out of the homes. And so we had that, but after the rain stopped, an hour or two, the water was gone.
Jeff, I could not agree anymore. Thank you so much for that explanation. And I couldn't agree anymore. From this past weekend, early into the work week, I think we handled this extremely well. Thankfully, we had a big break yesterday, but boy, this could have been a very different scenario. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We will see what the rest of our Atlantic hurricane season holds. But yeah, today, first tropical storm of the season, Tropical Storm Arthur. Guys, back to you.
Okay, always good to hear from Jeff and Cheetah with that relationship, to be able to get that perspective from